Sweetheart, this is a divorce agreement. Very fair, very generous. My mother-in-law slid the white envelope across the dining room table, slowly, with just the tips of her fingers, the way you push a dirty plate away from you. The envelope stopped right in front of me, between the crystal wine glass and the passion fruit mousse, and she smiled. That smile. The one I had known for 7 years. The scalpel smile. The kind that cuts clean and lets you bleed out slowly. William keeps the apartment. You walk away with $50,000 and will guarantee the boy's private school tuition through high school. $50,000. She was offering me $50,000 to disappear from her son's life, to vanish, to go back to the south side of Chicago where I came from, like someone returning a defective product. I looked at my husband. He was sitting right beside me, head down, fork resting on the napkin, eyes fixed on some invisible point on the linen tablecloth. Silent, like always. Silent, like always. A coward, like he had been for the last 7 years of my life. And my mother-in-law kept smiling. She had no idea that I owned 40% of the company where her husband thought he was king. She had no idea that my net worth was $4.2 million. She had no idea that the girl from the South Side, the girl she looked down on, was the same person who had been keeping the family business from going under. But that night, she was going to find out. Because I had a black leather portfolio sitting in my lap under the table. And inside that portfolio were 4 documents that were about to flip that table completely upside down. My name is Naomi Helena Carter. I am 33 years old, and this is the story of how I dismantled the pride of a family that humiliated me for 7 years, without ever raising my voice. Not once. Before I go any further, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this right now, from wherever you are, whether you're on the couch, in bed, in the kitchen, waiting for your coffee to finish, drop a comment and tell me what time it is where you are and what city you're watching from. I read every single comment, every one. And if this story touches you in any way, please subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, and leave a like. That like might seem small, but it means everything. It helps this story reach more women who need to hear it, okay? Let's go. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. For anyone who doesn't know, the South Side is working class. Narrow streets, houses pressed up against each other, chain-link fences, the smell of the alley after a heavy rain, loud music on Friday nights so strong the floor of your living room vibrated. Sunday mornings with the pastor at the storefront church on the corner, her voice cracking through the microphone, promising deliverance, promising breakthrough. And right in the middle of all of that, my mother, Dorothy Carter, Maria Dorothy Carter, 5 feet tall, 140 pounds of woman, salt and pepper hair pulled tight into a bun, hands rough from bleach and dish soap, a back that curved a little more each year from 32 years of getting down on her knees to clean other people's floors. Soft voice, steady eyes. The kind of woman who doesn't need to raise her voice for you to feel the full weight of what she's saying. My mother raised me and my brother alone. Randall, 36 years old now, a city bus driver on the route that runs from the west side to downtown Chicago and back. My father left when I was 4. No letter, no warning, no child support, no goodbye. One day he was there. The next morning, his side of the dresser drawer was empty, and my mother was sitting on the edge of the bed with dry eyes and pressed lips. The expression of a woman who already knew this was coming. She never cried in front of us, not once. She swallowed the pain and turned it into work. She left the house at 5:30 every morning and came home at 7 every night, 6 days a week. She cleaned a mansion up in Lincoln Park, the kind of neighborhood where the houses have backyards bigger than our entire block. $200 a week, that's what she made. And with that, she paid rent, electricity, water, gas, school supplies, uniforms, lunch money, and there was still rice and beans on the table every single night. There was no room for dignity in that budget. But dignity she had for free. In amounts no money could buy. My mother's hands were a map of her life. Thick like sandpaper, cracked in the winter, red from bleach and disinfectant, but always clean. She washed them with bar soap every single time she walked through the door, like she was trying to wash the whole day off her skin before she hugged me. And she would hug me, smelling like soap and exhaustion. I'd feel those rough hands on the back of my neck, and I would think, one day I'm going to give this woman a better life. One day, those hands are going to rest. I was good in school. Really good. Top of my class every single year. Not because of talent, because of discipline. I studied because it was the only thing that didn't cost money. I had a notebook and a pen. I borrowed books from the library. And I had more than enough willpower. My 5th grade teacher, Ms. Marlene Johnson, was the first person outside of my home who looked at me and saw something beyond poor girl from the South Side. She called my mother in for a conference one rainy afternoon. I remember my mother showed up still wearing her cleaning uniform because she didn't have time to change. Black skirt, white top, her work shoes soaking wet. She sat down in that chair with her purse in her lap and her hands folded together, like someone praying before receiving news. "Mrs. Carter, your daughter is brilliant. She needs opportunity." My mother looked at Ms. Johnson with those steady eyes I knew so well. The look of someone who wants to believe but has been let down by life too many times to trust it easily. "I clean houses, Ms. Johnson. I don't have money for opportunity. There are scholarships, there's financial aid, there's the SAT prep. I'll help." Ms. Johnson prepared me for the SAT for free. Saturday mornings at her apartment in Hyde Park, a small place with a bookshelf that covered the entire wall and the smell of fresh coffee. 2 years, every single week. She marked up my essays in red pen, and she told me, "Naomi, you write like someone who understands the weight of words. Use that." I got into the University of Illinois at Chicago. Full scholarship, business administration. My mother cried for 3 days. 3 days straight. Not from sadness. From a joy so big she didn't know where to put it. A joy too large to fit inside our small apartment on the South Side. "My daughter at a university," she kept saying, "just like the kids from Lincoln Park." I looked at her and held those rough hands between mine. "Not just like them, Mom. Better, because they got in with SAT prep courses that cost $2,000. I got in with Ms. Johnson and a $1.50 notebook. In college, I found the thing that was going to change my life forever. It wasn't a leadership class. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't supply chain management. It was a class in my junior year. Personal finance and capital markets. Professor Harris, a man with thick-framed glasses and a tie that was never quite straight. He talked about money the way some people talk about poetry. He said something I never forgot. I wrote it in my notebook, circled it 3 times, and carried it with me like a charm for years after. Money is not what you earn. It's what you do with what you earn. I was making $900 a month from my work-study job. I lived on $500. I invested $400 every month, without exception, without telling myself, this month I can't. I always could, because I cut everything that wasn't absolutely essential. No eating out, no new clothes, no streaming subscriptions, no parties, nothing that cost $1 more than what I needed to survive. I lived like I was broke and invested like I was building an empire. Because my mother had taught me something that no university ever teaches. Baby, the rich man who shows everybody he's rich is because he's not really that rich. The truly wealthy, nobody knows. U.S. Treasury bonds first. Safe, guaranteed. Small returns, but consistent. Then CDs, then individual stocks, then real estate investment trusts, then day trading, but not the reckless kind. Not the kind you see in YouTube ads where someone promises you'll be a millionaire in 90 days. Day trading with spreadsheets, with technical analysis. With the discipline of a woman who knows that every dollar is a brick and that walls are built slowly. By 22, I had $12,000 invested. It seemed like a little. But I would stare at that number on my phone and think, this didn't exist 2 years ago. I built this from nothing, with patience and sacrifice. By 25, 87,000. By 27, 210,000. By 28, $480,000. All on my own. All in silence. No Instagram posts, no flexing. I didn't even tell my brother. Because the second thing my mother taught me was, money is like a secret. The fewer people who know, the safer it is. I was 27 years old, $480,000 invested, and the entire world thought I was just a financial analyst at a logistics company in the South Loop, making $4,500 a month. And I let them think that, because I didn't need anyone to know. I needed the money to grow, and it grew, quietly, just like me. It was at an investor reception at the Palmer House Hotel that my life took a turn nobody could have predicted. One of those cocktail events where men in suits talk about returns while eating hors d'oeuvres and pretending to care about the people standing next to them. My company sent representatives, and I, as a financial analyst, was assigned to attend and take notes. Take notes, like I was a secretary, but I went. Because every door is a door. During the coffee break, between the smoked salmon crostinis and the sparkling water nobody was drinking, a man sat down next to me. 72 years old. Thin white hair, a well-cut suit but wrinkled at the shoulders, the kind of man who used to care about appearances and then stopped. Tired eyes but sharp, intelligent, the kind of eyes that have seen a great deal and learned to separate what matters from what doesn't. "Young lady," he said. The voice was low, direct, no decoration. "You're an investor." I looked at him. 2 seconds. Good suit, simple watch, expensive shoes, but worn. A man who had money, who perhaps still had some, but who was carrying a financial weight that was costing him sleep. "I am," I said, without hesitating. "How much do you have?" "Enough." He looked at me differently then. Not the way men at these events usually look at young women. Not that up-and-down look that measures something it has no business measuring. This was recognition, like he had found exactly what he was looking for in the very last place he expected to find it. "I need $450,000, he said, "or I have to close my doors." He said it the way you rip off a bandage, fast, painful, necessary. "I can offer 40% equity in my company. One condition." What condition? Anonymity. My partner cannot know who the investor is. He paused, choosing his words carefully. If he finds out it's a 27-year-old woman, he won't accept it. His ego won't allow it. Something cold settled in my stomach. Not fear, recognition. I knew that kind of ego. I had seen it before. The kind that believes money is only legitimate when it comes in a suit and a tie. The kind that looks at a black woman from the South Side and sees an assistant, a receptionist, a helper. Never an investor, never a partner, never a boss. "I have a condition too," I said, slowly, firmly. The man, Mr. Douglas, raised his eyebrows. "I want access to every number. Balance sheets, P&L statements, cash flow, bank statements, everything, in real time. And I will restructure the company from the inside, without appearing. How? Through you. I give the direction. You execute. Nobody knows it's me." Arthur Douglas looked at me for a long moment. I held his gaze without looking away, without smiling, without trying to convince him. I didn't need to convince him. The numbers were going to do that for me. "How old are you?" he asked, almost whispering. 27. "You talk like you're 50. I grew up on the South Side, Mr. Douglas. We age fast." He let out a short laugh, almost involuntary. The laugh of a man who had just found hope somewhere he had stopped looking for it. Deal. The company was called Douglas and Hartwell Construction, a holding company, commercial construction. $32 million a year in revenue, 240 employees, 14 active projects across Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. From the outside, it looked solid, imposing. From the inside, it was hemorrhaging. The partner, Mr. Richard Hartwell, spent money like the company was a credit card with no limit, excessive personal withdrawals. Business trips that were really vacations in disguise, luxury vehicles traded in every 2 years. The executive offices remodeled 3 times in 5 years. The man was generating millions and burning millions, and the company was 6 months from bankruptcy when I put my money into it. $480,000, almost everything I had, invested in a company I had never visited in person, run by a man I had never met, through a holding company called HC Capital LLC, which had no connection to my name in any public record. Clean EN, generic trade name. Registered address at a virtual office downtown, a ghost, invisible, exactly the way I wanted it. In 6 months, I restructured Douglas and Hartwell Construction from my apartment in Wicker Park, from my laptop, from my kitchen table at 11 o'clock at night after the world went to sleep. I cut $480,000 per year in unnecessary expenses. I renegotiated 7 supplier contracts, because suppliers are like children. They push limits. If you let them, they'll take everything. I restructured the company's bank debt, moving it from short-term to long-term, which immediately relieved the cash flow pressure. I replaced the accounting firm. The old one was a personal friend of Richard Hartwell's and had been looking the other way on everything. I implemented weekly cash flow reporting, monthly financial summaries, quarterly audits. Revenue increased 18% in the first year. Profit margin doubled. Outstanding debt fell 40%. The company that had been standing at the edge of a cliff started moving forward. And Richard Hartwell, my future father-in-law, though I didn't know it yet, walked into board meetings with his chest puffed out. Arthur, the company is flying. My leadership is delivering results. Mr. Douglas would call me afterward, barely hiding the laugh in his voice. He thinks it's his doing. Should I let him keep thinking that? Yes, I said. Let him. Because in business, as in life, the people who do the real work rarely get the credit, and the people who take the credit rarely did the real work. I met William before I ever invested in the company, back in 2017. At the movie theater in the magnificent Mile Shopping Center on Michigan Avenue. I had gone alone. Saturday afternoon. A horror movie, that one about the nun that everyone was talking about. I liked going to movies alone. Medium popcorn without butter, small drink, aisle seat, phone off. An hour and a half where the world didn't exist. He was there with friends. 3 guys in polo shirts, designer shorts, clean sneakers. The kind of group that talks loud, laughs loud, and occupies space like they own it. But William wasn't like that. He was a step behind the others. Smiling, but not performing it. Listening more than talking. And when the line moved and he ended up standing next to me, by coincidence, he looked at me and said, "You came alone?" It wasn't a pickup line. There was no up and down look. It was genuine curiosity. 6'3", slim, light brown hair, a strong jaw, but no arrogance in it. Looking at a 5'4" woman with natural hair, a simple sundress, and no makeup, and asking the most honest question a stranger had ever asked me. I did. I like going alone. I would too, honestly. But my friends dragged me. He smiled, a crooked, almost shy smile. We ended up sitting next to each other by coincidence. We talked on the way out. He was kind in a way that caught me off guard. Not the, "I'm trying to impress you" kind of kind. The real kind. He asked my name, where I was from, what I did. "Where are you from?" "South Side." "For real?" He opened his eyes wider, not with disgust, with surprise. I've never actually been to the South Side. Nobody from Lincoln Park ever goes. He laughed, an open laugh, no walls up. Can I call you sometime? You can. And he did. The very next day, 9 in the morning on a Sunday, he asked me to grab breakfast, not at some fancy brunch spot, at a diner 2 blocks from his apartment, a regular diner with scrambled eggs and drip coffee. We sat in a corner booth for 2 hours, just talking. He told me he was a civil engineer, graduated from Northwestern. He worked at his father's company but didn't love it. Said he'd rather stay home reading or watching a documentary than go to a party full of people who were only pretending to like each other. My dad thinks I'm lazy, he said, folding and unfolding his paper napkin. But I'm not lazy. I'm just not interested in what he thinks is important. What do you think is important? He looked at me. He thought about it. Honestly, peace. I think peace is important. That was the moment I fell for him. Not the face, not the car, not the last name. I fell for a man who said peace was important and looked at me like I might be the answer. We dated, and in the beginning it was beautiful. William, away from his family, was a good man, warm, present, interested. He asked about my work, my ideas, my plans. He listened to me talk about markets, and he didn't pretend to understand. He'd admit he was lost and ask me to explain again. And I would, and he would listen, with real attention, with respect. Naomi. He said it one night on the balcony of my Wicker Park apartment, looking out at the lights of Chicago below. You are the most intelligent person I know. You don't get out much. I know plenty of rich people. Intelligence is different. I should have listened more carefully to that sentence, because buried inside it was everything that was going to happen later. He knew plenty of rich people, and in his family, rich people were the only people who counted. And I, who wasn't rich, at least not in the version they could see, did not count. The trouble started when I met his family, the first dinner at the Hartwell House, Lincoln Park, 4-story brownstone, a heated rooftop pool, a landscaped backyard designed by an architect, 3 household staff, a driver, a Mercedes SUV in the garage next to a BMW, the kind of house I had only ever been inside of when my mother came to clean. And suddenly I was walking through the front door, not the service entrance, the front door, on the arm of the son of the family. And the feeling was strange, like the universe had made some kind of error and placed me in the wrong scene by accident. Mrs. Beverly Hartwell opened the door. 60 years old, had never worked a day in her professional life, wife of an executive since age 23, pearl white linen dress, gold necklace with a diamond pendant, hair dyed blonde in a shade that only costs $1,000 a month to maintain. That kind of blonde that isn't yellow, it's golden, it's expensive, it announces itself. A sharp smile, the kind that looks warm from a distance and cuts up close. So, this is Naomi. She said my name the way someone pronounces a foreign word for the first time, testing it, skeptical, with a small thread of disbelief woven through it. I am. Nice to meet you, Mrs. Beverly. I extended my hand firmly, looking her in the eye. She took my hand with just her fingertips, brief, cold. And as she did, her eyes moved, slowly, deliberately, from the top of my head to my shoes. I felt the gaze pass over my dress. From a boutique, $49, floral, the nicest thing I owned, my shoes, outlet store, $22, black, low heel, my bag, no brand, bought at a market downtown, my hair, natural, curly, voluminous, loose, the hair I wore with pride, the hair I had never straightened, never pinned back to please anyone, never changed. Different. She released my hand and took a small step backward, like someone adjusting the focus on a camera. William has always dated girls from our circle. Code for social class, code for skin color, code for bank account, code for, "You are not from here." Mr. Richard Hartwell was worse. He came in from the living room with an unlit cigar between his fingers and a full suit on a Sunday, inside his own house. 6 feet tall, executive belly, silver hair combed back with gel. The kind of man who uses his own physical presence as an argument. "What is it you do, young lady?" He didn't say my name. He said, "young lady," like someone talking to the cleaning woman's daughter. "I'm a financial analyst at a logistics firm." Ah. Pause. Condescending smile. "And what do you make, if you don't mind my asking?" "I do mind." The smile died. The silence thickened. Mrs. Beverly swallowed. William behind me put his hand on my back, nervous. And Richard Hartwell looked at me the way someone looks at an animal they thought was tame that just bit them. "Fair enough. Excuse me." But he didn't excuse me. His eyes didn't excuse me. His posture didn't excuse me. He only retreated because he hadn't expected resistance. At that dinner table, with the fine china and the crystal glasses and the housekeeper pouring wine I hadn't asked for, I understood the dynamic perfectly. Richard Hartwell wanted to know what I was worth in dollars, because to him, a person was a balance sheet, assets and liabilities, revenue and expense, and I, the girl from the South Side with no luxury car and no recognizable last name, was a liability, an expense. Something that devalued the investment called William. What neither of them knew, what I kept silent for 7 years, was that 1 year after that dinner, I was going to save the company that paid for that brownstone. That the liability from the South Side was going to put $480,000 into Douglas and Hartwell Construction and prevent Richard Hartwell from closing his doors due to his own administrative incompetence. That the girl in the boutique dress and the outlet shoes was going to become the owner of 40% of the fortune that paid for Mrs. Beverly's Mercedes, Richard's cigars, and William's salary. But I said nothing. Because patience. Because strategy. Because my mother taught me that a housekeeper watches everything, hears everything, sees everything, and keeps everything, without complaining, without reacting, until the right moment. And I had inherited her eyes. We got married in 2018, the same year I made the investment. William didn't know. Mr. Douglas kept the secret the way he kept the documents. Locked, protected, inaccessible. HC Capital LLC remained, for all purposes, an investment fund with a Chicago LLC filing. No face, no name, no gender. A financial ghost that held 40% of the equity and sent strategic guidance through Mr. Douglas, like someone whispering in the ear of a king. The wedding was simple. City Hall. Lunch for 30 people at a restaurant in Wicker Park. My mother in a blue dress she bought at Marshall's. Randall in a borrowed suit. The Hartwell family sat at a separate table, like they were claiming territory. Mrs. Beverly wore a hat. A hat. To a City Hall luncheon reception, like she was at the Kentucky Derby. We moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in Lincoln Square. 1,200 square feet, financed, both names on the mortgage. And the day we moved in, Mrs. Beverly showed up in the doorway, arms crossed, inspecting the apartment the way you inspect a cheap hotel room. "You couldn't find something in Lincoln Park?" William, carrying a box of books, didn't look at her. "We're starting out, Mom." She turned to me, the scalpel smile. "If she actually worked, you would have started out right." I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. My net worth at that moment was already over $1.2 million. The company had appreciated my stake since the initial investment. Mrs. Beverly's net worth, in her own name? 0. Nothing. She didn't have a single dollar that was truly hers. Everything belonged to the husband. The house, the car, the bank accounts, the credit card. Everything was in Richard's name. She was a wife, not an owner, not a partner, not anything. She was 100% financially dependent on a man who spent other people's money like it was his own, and called me poor. The Sunday dinners at the Lincoln Park brownstone became ritual. Every month. First Sunday, family lunch, 12-place table, white linen tablecloth, crystal glasses, cloth napkins folded into fans, housekeeper in uniform serving salad, entree, and dessert. And me, seated at the far end of the table, always, as if there were an invisible hierarchy that everyone respected, placed at the tip. At the spot where guests sit who nobody truly invited. The offenses were elegant. That's what nobody tells you about how wealthy people humiliate you. It's not yelling. It's not a slap. It's not a curse word. It's a whisper. It's a look. It's the extra pause before they respond when you ask a question. It's the silence when you tell a story. It's the smile when you use the wrong fork. It's the poisoned kindness that makes you question whether you're being insulted or whether you're just being too sensitive. Naomi, dear, this chicken is lovely. Do you cook? Mrs. Beverly would smile with her lips and cut with her eyes. I imagine on the South Side, everyone learns young. Naomi, dear, you don't need to bring wine. We have a wine cellar. She would glance at the bottle I brought, a Malbec I had picked out and genuinely liked, like someone discovering an insect in their food. Naomi, dear, little Michael needs a new uniform for school. I'll take care of it. And she would wire the money directly to the school's account without asking me, without waiting for my response, like someone making a charity donation to a poor relative. Always dear. The word operated like a surgical glove, concealing the blade while the incision was already underway. The children came during that period. Michael arrived in 2019, Lily in 2021, my two treasures. The two reasons I kept biting my tongue, swallowing the insults, and returning to that white linen table every Sunday. Because Mrs. Beverly paid for the children's private school, one of the most prestigious prep schools in Chicago, and made a point of saying so in front of everyone. We cover the tuition because their mother can't afford it. She said that once, in front of a cousin of William's who was visiting, like she was delivering a charity report. We help where we can. I could have paid for 3 schools like that one. But if I paid, questions would arise. Where did the money come from? How does a financial analyst making $4,500 a month pay $3,000 a month in school tuition? The questions would lead to answers, and the answers would lead to the truth. And the truth was not ready to come out yet. So I let it be. I swallowed it. I cataloged each offense in my mind, each look of contempt, each poisoned smile, each sigh from Mrs. Beverly when I walked in. Each time Richard called me that woman instead of my name. 7 years of marriage, and the man never used my name. That woman. Like someone referring to a stranger, to someone who had drifted into his son's life by accident and would, with any luck, drift back out soon. And William, quiet, always quiet, head down, fork in the plate, eyes on the napkin. He never defended me, never pushed back, never once opened his mouth to say, Mom, Naomi is my wife. Treat her with respect. Never, not once in 7 years. One night, driving home from one of those lunches, me behind the wheel of my silver Chevy Equinox, the lights of Chicago blurring past the window, the kids asleep in the back seat, I said it. Quietly, controlled, tired. William, your mother humiliated me again. He was on his phone. He looked up slowly. She's not trying to humiliate you, Naomi. That's just how she is. How she is cruel. He sighed. That sigh. The sigh of a man who has decided that his wife's pain is an overreaction. She's from a different generation. A different generation is not an excuse for cruelty, William. Long silence. The car moving through the city, the engine, the breathing of the sleeping kids. You could defend me. My voice came out weaker than I wanted it to. Almost a plea, almost a prayer. And I hated the way it sounded. He was quiet for a few seconds. I could see his jaw tighten. His hands gripped the edge of his seat. I don't want to create conflict. The conflict already exists, William. I gripped the steering wheel, felt my fingers ache. I am the conflict. I exist, and that is already the conflict. He said nothing. He reached over and turned on the radio. Country music, low volume, the music filling the space that his words should have filled. I drove the rest of the way home in silence, and he stayed silent too. And that shared silence, the silence of two people who both know something is broken but don't have the courage to name it, was possibly the loudest thing I had ever heard in my life. There was one time, though, that the humiliation didn't only come for me, and that was the time that hurt the most. Easter Sunday, 2019, the first year of my marriage. I made the mistake of bringing my mother to the Hartwell family gathering because Mrs. Beverly had said, "Bring your family too, dear. Family is family." And I believed her, because part of me, in those early days, still had hope. That things would improve, that they would accept me, that my mother would be treated with at least a minimum of dignity. My mother put on the best dress she owned, navy blue, bought at Marshall's because I had taken her shopping specifically for the occasion. Black closed-toe shoes, pearl earrings, costume, but lovely. Her silver hair styled with care. She was nervous. I could see it in the way she held her purse in her lap during the car ride, her fingers interlaced around the strap like someone holding onto a life preserver. "Baby, do I look okay?" "You look beautiful, Mom." "These people, they're different from us." "Different doesn't mean better, Mom." She looked at me with those steady eyes, the eyes that had seen the world from behind service entrances and knew exactly how it worked. Not better, but they think they are. The brownstone was decorated for Easter. Flower arrangements in the entryway, Belgian chocolate eggs in a wicker basket, 13-place table set for lunch, Mrs. Beverly in a floral dress and a hat. Again, the hat, and the smile of a professional hostess. When my mother walked in, I saw Mrs. Beverly's expression shift. It was subtle. A fraction of a second of recalibration, like someone spotting something unexpected and needing to adjust their reaction. My mother, in a dress from Marshall's, with hands made thick by 32 years of domestic work, with a back that curved slightly from a lifetime of bending, walking through the front door of that Lincoln Park brownstone. "Mrs. Dorothy, so glad you could make it." The voice was sweet. The eyes were calculating. The lunch happened. My mother sat next to me. She ate little, said less, smiled politely when someone addressed her, which was rare, because almost no one did. She was invisible at that table, a chair occupied by someone who didn't belong in the scene. After lunch, while the men smoked cigars on the patio and the women took coffee in the living room, Mrs. Beverly approached my mother. "Mrs. Dorothy, come with me. I'll get you some coffee." And she led my mother to the kitchen, not to the living room where the other women were, to the kitchen, to the service area, where the household staff rested, where the coffee was prepared before being brought out on a tray. The back of the house, the place for those who serve, not for those who are served. My mother drank her coffee standing at the kitchen counter next to the Hartwell's housekeeper, who looked at my mother with an expression of discomfort that said everything without saying a single word. When I went looking for her and found her there, I felt the blood rise in a way I had never felt before. A heat that started in my stomach and moved up my spine and reached my eyes and burned. Burned so badly that I had to squeeze my hands into fists to keep from shaking. "Mom, what are you doing in here?" "Beverly brought me in for coffee." Her voice was soft, calm, no anger, no visible hurt. But I knew my mother. I knew every shade of that voice. And what I heard underneath the softness was something that broke me. She wasn't surprised, because my mother had spent her entire life being directed to the kitchen of other people's homes. For her, this was normal, expected, the place where women like her were meant to sit. We left shortly after. In the car, my mother was quiet for 10 minutes, looking out the window, the Lincoln Park houses going by, the big yards, the iron gates, the luxury cars in the driveways. Then she spoke, without looking at me, her eyes still on the window. "Baby, That woman served me coffee in the kitchen, in the service area. I know, Mom. I saw. Silence. I'm not going back there. You don't have to. Silence. She turned to me slowly, and those steady eyes, steadier than ever, with a flame I had never seen in them before. Not anger, prophecy. But one day, baby, one day she's going to know who we are. That sentence stayed inside me like a seed, buried deep, watered by every humiliation, every look of contempt, every poisoned deer that misses. Beverly sent my direction. The seed grew slowly, in silence. The way everything that truly grows, grows. Meanwhile, I kept running the company from behind the curtains. Late nights on the laptop, emails to Mr. Douglas, spreadsheets, reports, decisions that no one knew were mine. The company grew. Revenue from 2018 to 2024 jumped 40%. The profit margin, which had been 6% when I came in, was now at 14. 14 active projects. Government contracts. Procurement bids won. 240 employees who had jobs because a 27-year-old woman from the South Side put every cent she had into a dying company and brought it back to life with Excel and the discipline of someone who understands the value of every dollar. And Richard Hartwell kept thinking it was his doing, kept sitting at the head of every table, with his cigar, his suits, his arrogance, walking into meetings and pounding the table and saying, "This company is mine. I built this." 35%. He had 35%. I had 40. And he didn't even know. My personal wealth kept growing alongside it. Dividends from the company, other investments, real estate I bought under the HC Capital name, 2 small apartment units in Lincoln Square, both rented, generating passive income. $4.2 million in total. And I still drove that silver Chevy Equinox, still bought my clothes at boutiques and outlet stores, still showed up to every Hartwell Sunday lunch and sat at the end of the table and listened to Mrs. Beverly call me dear with poison in her voice and Richard call me that woman without even looking in my direction. The black Mercedes GLA was sitting in the garage of one of my investment properties. I never drove it to Lincoln Park. I never drove it anywhere anyone would see it. It waited, like I did, because I had learned from my mother. The best moment is not when you can speak. The best moment is when the other person has no way to deny what they're about to hear, and that moment was coming. October 2024, Sunday lunch, the Lincoln Park brownstone, the last straw. The lunch started like every other one. 12-place table, white linen, roasted chicken, always roasted chicken, like Mrs. Beverly had decided that was the dish you serve a poor daughter-in-law. Expensive wine nobody offered me. Conversation about the new project in Naperville. About Richard's nephew who got into medical school. About the trip the couple was planning to Italy for Christmas. I was at the far end of the table, like always, with the plate in front of me and that familiar tightness in my chest, that chronic ache of someone who knows they're going to be wounded and just doesn't know when or how. And then, between the chicken and the dessert, Mrs. Beverly set down her silverware on the edge of her plate, wiped her lips with the linen napkin. Looked at Richard. He gave a slight nod, almost imperceptible, like a general giving the green light for a planned operation. Family. Richard and I have made a decision. Everyone looked up. The sound of silverware stopped. Even the children in the other rooms seemed to go quiet, as if the entire house could sense something was coming. Mrs. Beverly took a breath, straightened her shoulders, smiled. That smile. The one I had known for 7 years and that had never once meant anything good. "We want William to marry someone more appropriate." The word landed on the table like a crystal glass dropped on marble. It shattered without making a sound, but I felt every fragment. Naomi is a fine woman. She looked at me. Her eyes were 2 pools of manufactured compassion. But she's not from our world, and the children deserve a mother who can give them the future they deserve. I stopped breathing, literally stopped. 2 seconds, 3. The air didn't come. The world went into slow motion. The sound in the room went mute. All I could hear was my own heartbeat in my ears, like a drum. She said that, at my own table, with my children in the next room, with the roasted chicken on my plate, with the crystal glass in my hand. I turned to William, slowly, every millimeter of that movement carrying 7 years of love, 7 years of frustration, 7 years of hope, 7 years of disappointment. I looked at him the way you look at a life preserver in the middle of the ocean. Defend me. Say something. One word. Just one. Show me I didn't marry a shadow. Show me there is a man somewhere inside this obedient boy. He looked down at his plate. His jaw tightened. His shoulders dropped. His fork speared a piece of chicken he never brought to his mouth. Silent. Like always. Like he had been for 7 years at that table while a woman he called his mother carved me into pieces. Richard completed the thought in his executive voice, like a man doing a cost-benefit analysis. Naomi, this isn't personal. It's practical. William needs a wife who can contribute, financially, socially. He paused. He rolled the unlit cigar between his fingers. You are limited in both of those areas. Limited. The owner of 40% of his company, called Limited. The cold that rose in me wasn't heat. It was ice. A coldness that started at the center of my chest and spread into my arms, my hands, my fingers. The coldness of a person who just crossed the line from victim to strategist, who stopped feeling and started calculating. I set my fork down on the table slowly, with the precision of someone disarming a device. I wiped my mouth with the napkin, folded it, set it beside the plate, every movement deliberate, every second controlled. I understand. Excuse me. I stood up. The chair made a quiet sound on the hardwood floor. I walked to the room where my children were playing. I took Michael's hand. I lifted Lily into my arms. I picked up my purse. I picked up my keys, and I left. William came after me. Quick steps in the hallway. His hand on my shoulder as I reached the front door. Naomi, they didn't mean... I turned slowly, and the look I gave him in that moment, I know he will never forget it, because it wasn't anger, it wasn't pain. It was something worse. It was the look of a woman who has just realized she has been alone in a 2-person marriage. William. My voice came out low, controlled, each word chosen deliberately. 7 years, 7 years I have sat at that table and swallowed it. Because I love you. Because I kept waiting for the day you would speak. But you don't speak. You never speak. The children were in my arms and in my hand. I didn't cry. I was not going to cry there. Not in that house. But the pain was real, and it was pulsing. And tonight your mother said to my face that she wants you to marry someone else. And you sat there, silent. I'll talk to them. You don't need to. I opened the door. The night air came in. Fresh, clean, different from the air inside that house that smelled like expensive perfume and performance. When I speak, it will be once, and it will be the last time. I put the children in the car, buckled them in, started the engine, and drove away from that brownstone for the last time as the woman they thought I was. Because the next time I came back, I would be who I actually am. That night, after I put the children to sleep, after I checked on Michael's breathing and tucked Lily's blanket back around her shoulders, after I closed their bedroom door without making a sound, I sat in the kitchen of my Lincoln Square apartment, alone, lights off, only the glow of my phone illuminating my face. I dialed Mr. Douglas's number. He answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. Mr. Douglas. My voice was calm, the calm of a person who has made the most important decision of their life and has no more doubt. It's time. Silence on the other end. 2 seconds. 3. His breathing, paused. Are you sure? Absolutely. What do you want to do? I looked out through the kitchen window, the lights of Chicago, the city that watched me grow up, struggle, invest, wait, the city where I had sat at the end of a table and stored every offense like someone storing ammunition. I want a dinner at the Hartwell house, with the whole family, and I want you there when they hand me the divorce envelope. I said it quietly, because I already knew what was coming. I knew Mrs. Beverly. I knew her playbook. The Sunday lunch where she suggested the divorce was the warning. The next step would be the document, the formalization, the white envelope with the agreement prepared by the family attorney. And they will deliver it. I know Mrs. Beverly. She doesn't stop until she gets what she wants. And when she comes with the envelope, I will be ready. Naomi, Mr. Douglas's voice thickened, not with authority, with emotion. I'll be by your side. I know, you always have been. I hung up, set the phone on the table, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt the muscles in my face relax. Because the weight of waiting, that invisible weight I had carried in my shoulders since the day my mother drank coffee standing in Beverly Hartwell's kitchen, was about to be placed on a table. Literally on a table. On the white linen and crystal glass table of the Lincoln Park brownstone. The weeks that followed were surgical preparation. I called my attorney, Ms. Rebecca Ford, Illinois Bar, a 50-year-old woman with an office in the West Loop. Short hair, firm voice, a reputation for never losing a family law case. I had met her 3 years earlier at a seminar on asset protection law at Northwestern's downtown campus. We exchanged information. I held on to it, because I knew one day I was going to need it. Miss Ford, they're going to ask me for the divorce before I ask them. I need to be prepared. I explained everything, the company, the holding, the 40%, the net worth, the 7 years of marriage, the humiliations, the envelope that was coming. She listened without interrupting, took notes, asked for documents. I sent everything, articles of organization, financial statements, investment records, property deeds, everything organized, everything ready. As I had been preparing for years, without knowing exactly when I'd use it, but knowing that I would. Naomi, you have a significant asset base. What was your property regime under the marriage? Separate property isn't fully recognized in Illinois the same way. We had a prenuptial agreement protecting premarital assets. So what you brought in before the marriage stays yours. And the business investment was made 3 months before the wedding. Perfect. That protects you. And HC Capital? HC Capital LLC was formed in early 2018, before the marriage. Everything in your name. Everything documented. Ms. Ford let out a long, slow breath. Pure admiration. Did you plan all of this? No. I protected myself. Planning would imply that I knew I was going to marry him. Protection is what you do when you grow up without a father and with a mother who cleaned other people's houses. While I prepared the legal side, Mr. Douglas prepared the business side. At my request, he updated all of the company's corporate documentation, board meeting minutes, updated operating agreement, 6-year financial performance report, everything notarized, everything official. Naomi, he said during one of our late-night calls, when you open this folder, there's no going back. I know, but for me, there hasn't been going back since the day my mother drank coffee in that kitchen. I also put together my own personal financial dossier. Every investment, every property, every income source, $4.2 million, detailed, printed. All of it inside a black leather portfolio I bought at an office supply store downtown. $45. The most important $45 portfolio in the history of Chicago. While I was building my strategy, Mrs. Beverly was building hers. I knew through William, who told me things without realizing he was preparing me, that his mother had consulted an attorney. that they were putting together a proposal for the good of everyone. Babe, my parents want to have dinner next Sunday. Just family. William said this on a Wednesday night while I was giving Lily a bath, washing shampoo into her curly hair while she laughed and splashed water in every direction. What about? I don't know. Mom said it's important. I knew. I knew the way I know the sun rises in the morning. It was the envelope, the divorce, the termination notice, the document Mrs. Beverly had prepared to remove me from the family, the way you let go of an employee who is no longer useful. Thank you for your service. Here are your severance terms. Sign here. You may go. Okay, we'll be there. I said it with the composure of a general who knows the battlefield before the enemy arrives. Thursday morning, I called Mr. Douglas. Sunday, dinner at the Hartwell House, 8 o'clock in the evening. How do you get in? As a business associate, I'll say I want to discuss a new project, something in Peoria. Richard won't question it. And if he asks why I'm at a family dinner? You're his old friend, Mr. Douglas. Friends show up for dinner. That's normal. He laughed quietly on the other end of the line. Naomi, I am 72 years old. I have seen a great deal in this lifetime, but I have never seen anyone play chess with this much precision. It's not chess, it's patience. Chess has equal pieces on both sides. In my life, I always played with half the pieces, but the ones I have, I know exactly where to put them. On Saturday evening, the night before the dinner, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I visited my mother, the South Side apartment, the same street, the same narrow block, the same iron gate, but renovated. I had paid for the renovation 2 years earlier through the HC Capital account. My mother thought it was a city assistance program. New roof, new floors, updated bathroom, kitchen with real cabinets, small, simple, but dignified. The way she deserved. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, the smell of pinto beans on the stove, a pot of coffee dripping through the cloth filter she had used for 20 years. The kids ran to her. She bent down, her back protesting, and wrapped both of them in those arms, with those hands that had cleaned the world for other people and never once considered themselves dirty. Mom, tomorrow I'm going to handle something. She looked at me. Those steady eyes. What kind of something? Something I should have handled a long time ago. She didn't ask more, because my mother knew how to read what I didn't say. She knew that when I spoke like this, with this kind of calm, this kind of stillness, the decision was already made and nothing in the world was going to move it. Go with God, baby. I will, Mom. She held my hands, squeezed. Those thick, warm hands wrapped around mine. I'll come back whole, Mom, I promise. Sunday, November 3rd, 2024. The day the Hartwell family discovered who I was. I got dressed in my apartment bathroom, slowly, with intention, like someone preparing for a ceremony. I did not put on a designer outfit. I did not put on heavy makeup. I did not put on jewelry. I went as I was, as I had always been. Simple black dress, simple but dignified, low shoes, natural hair, curly, loose, free. No earrings, no necklace, no designer bag. But I carried the black leather portfolio, the $45 portfolio, with 4 documents inside that were worth more than everything in that Lincoln Park brownstone. I left the children with my mother. I wasn't bringing them. I didn't want them to see. I didn't want them to hear. Children don't need to watch adults discovering truths they should have seen for themselves. William drove, the black BMW cutting through Chicago in the early evening. I sat beside him with the portfolio in my lap, under my coat. He didn't notice the portfolio. He was tense, gripping the steering wheel, staring at the road with excessive focus, the way people do when they're trying to avoid conversation. You okay? He asked somewhere around the expressway. I'm fine. Whatever my parents are going to say, we'll handle it together. I looked at him. his profile lit by the headlights of oncoming cars, the strong jaw, the brown hair, the eyes I had loved since the movie theater, the hands that had never defended me. William. My voice came out soft, almost tender. Tonight I'm going to speak, and I need you to listen. For the first time in 7 years, I need you to actually listen. He glanced at me, swallowed, nodded. We arrived at 8. The brownstone was lit, garden lights on, front door open, housekeeper in the entryway, the smell of good food that I had long since come to associate with pain. Mr. Douglas's car was already parked out front. A silver Camry, understated, like him, like me. 2 quiet people in a house of performance. Richard met us in the living room, full suit. Sunday evening inside his own home, and the man was in a full suit, the unlit cigar in his jacket pocket, the executive smile, the smile of a man who believes he controls everything. William, Naomi. He said my name. This time he actually said it, because that evening I was the featured player in the script they had written, the script where I signed my exit papers and disappeared from the story. Mrs. Beverly came from the kitchen, royal blue dress, gold necklace with a sapphire pendant, hair immaculate, the blade smile. She looked at me the way someone looks at nearly completed work. Naomi, dear, so glad you came. Dear. For the last time. The table was set, 6 places, Richard at the head, Mrs. Beverly to his right, William to his left, me next to William, at the far end. And at the other end, Mr. Douglas, seated with the stillness of a man who knows what's about to happen and is simply waiting for the curtain to rise. Arthur. What a surprise. I didn't know you were coming. Richard shook his old business partner's hand with manufactured enthusiasm. Richard, I wanted to talk about a potential project in Peoria. Thought I'd join you for dinner. Of course, we'll talk business after. First, family. Family. He said family, looking at William and Mrs. Beverly. I was not included in the word. The appetizer was served. Light conversation, weather, the market, the Naperville project, the usual, polite, civilized, venomous underneath, like everything in that family. I ate little, drank water, kept the portfolio in my lap, under the table, resting on my legs. I could feel the weight of the leather against my thighs, the weight of the documents, the weight of the truth. The entree arrived, beef tenderloin with roasted potatoes. Mrs. Beverly commented on the recipe. Richard praised the wine. William pushed his food around without eating. Mr. Douglas sipped water and observed. And I waited, because I knew. The dessert. Mrs. Beverly always saved the venom for the dessert. The dessert came. Cheesecake with raspberry coulis, served in individual crystal dishes. The housekeeper set one before each person and withdrew. The kitchen door closed, and the silence that settled in the room was different. It was the silence before thunder, the air that goes heavy in the seconds before a storm. Mrs. Beverly cleared her throat, delicately, like someone adjusting a microphone before a rehearsed speech. Naomi, dear. Dear. The glove, the blade, the ritual. Richard and I have spent a great deal of time thinking about the future, about the family, about what's best for everyone. She looked at Richard. He nodded, the nod of 2 conspirators who have rehearsed the scene. And then she made the gesture I had been expecting for weeks. The gesture I knew was coming. I watched it in slow motion, the way you watch an accident unfold when you already know how it ends. Mrs. Beverly slipped her hand underneath her dinner plate where she had hidden it before the meal, and produced a white envelope. Sealed, with the logo of a law firm printed in the upper left corner. She slid the envelope across the white linen tablecloth. It made a soft, sliding sound against the fabric, moving slowly, like a snake through tall grass. It came to rest in front of me, between the cheesecake and my hand. Sweetheart, we think it's time for you and William to go your separate ways. Her voice was sweet, controlled, each word measured like a dose of medicine carefully calibrated. This is a divorce agreement. Very fair, very generous. William keeps the apartment. You receive $50,000 in compensation. And we will guarantee the boys' school tuition through high school. $50,000. She was offering me $50,000 to walk out of her son's life. My actual net worth, $4.2 million. She was offering me 1.2% of what I had to disappear, to go back to the South Side with $50,000 in my pocket and my dignity on the floor, to become the statistic, the ex-wife who married above her station and was returned when they were done with her. I looked at the envelope, the white paper against the linen, the law firm logo, the insignificant weight of a document that believed it could determine my fate. I looked at Mrs. Beverly, the triumphant smile, the eyes bright with premature victory, the gold necklace catching the light from the chandelier, the posture of a queen who has just signed the exile decree of a peasant woman. I looked at Richard, the cigar in his pocket, the perfect suit, the executive belly, the arrogance printed on every line of his face. The man who called me limited without knowing that I was the one who had been holding up the chair he sat in. I looked at William, beside me, so close physically, so far in everything that mattered. Head down, hand on the napkin, squeezing the linen like someone holding on to keep from falling. Eyes wet, jaw clenched, silent, like always, silent. 7 years of silence compressed into the posture of a man who has surrendered. I picked up the envelope, opened it, read 3 pages. Divorce agreement. William James Hartwell retains the marital property. Naomi Helena Carter receives financial compensation of $50,000. Joint custody of the minor children. Child support of $2,500 monthly. Signed by the Hartwell family attorney at the bottom. I read every word, slowly, without rushing, letting the silence at the table grow, feeling the eyes of everyone on me, the expectation. The certainty they had that I was going to cry, or scream, or plead, or quietly accept it, like the submissive woman they had always believed I was. I set the envelope on the table, slowly, beside the cheesecake dish, and I smiled. Mrs. Beverly, thank you very much. She frowned. The triumphant smile faltered, for the first time. Thank you, because I have been waiting 7 years for this moment. Mrs. Beverly's smile died. Richard adjusted in his chair. William raised his head for the first time all evening, and Mr. Douglas, at the other end of the table, folded his hands in his lap and waited. I placed the black leather portfolio on the table. On top of the white linen, the $45 portfolio on the $500 tablecloth. I opened the zipper slowly, the sound of it cut through the silence like a blade. Before anyone signs anything, I have some documents for the family. Richard leaned forward. What documents? I removed the first paper, set it on the table, face up, readable. This is the updated operating agreement of Douglas and Hartwell Construction, with the current equity breakdown. My voice came out steady, clear, no tremor. The voice of someone who has rehearsed this 1,000 times in her head and is now simply reading from a page, because that is exactly what she is doing. Richard Allen Hartwell, 35%. Arthur James Douglas, 25%. HC Capital LLC, 40%. Richard looked at the document, then at me. The expression of a man who doesn't understand why the housekeeper is bringing up things that are none of her business. And HC Capital is an investment fund. What does this have to do with dinner? It has everything to do with dinner. I took one full breath. Let the air fill my lungs with certainty. Because HC Capital LLC is me. The silence that followed was not silence. It was matter. It had texture. It had weight. It had a smell. The smell of cheesecake and scented candles and fear. The kind of silence that comes before an earthquake, before a wave, before the moment when the world you knew ceases to exist. Richard looked at me, mouth slightly open, eyes uncomprehending, his brain processing information that could not fit into the version of the world he had built over 63 years of life. I produced the second document, Articles of Organization, HC Capital LLC. Sole member, Naomi Helena Carter. I read it aloud. Social Security number, address, 40% equity in Douglas and Hartwell Construction. Richard took the document. His hands were visibly trembling. The fingers that had held cigars with authority could barely hold a sheet of paper. He read it again, his eyes moving across the lines like someone searching for an error, a flaw, proof that this was a mistake. His face changed color. White first, the white of someone who just absorbed a shock, then red, the red of rage rising, then gray, the gray of someone who realizes they have lost a game they didn't even know they were playing. This is not possible. His voice came out strangled, thin, nothing like the executive voice he used to give orders and pass judgment. And then Mr. Douglas spoke from the other end of the table, for the first time all evening. His voice rough, 72 years of it, calm, unmovable. It is possible, Richard, and it is true. He set his water glass down carefully. Naomi has been your business partner since 2018. She made the $480,000 investment that kept the company from going bankrupt. Pause. Mr. Douglas looked at Richard with an expression that held both pity and truth. That money you thought came from a Chicago investment fund? It came from her, from your daughter-in-law, from the woman from the South Side that you've been calling that woman for 7 years. The sound that came from Mrs. Beverly was almost inaudible, a small gasp, like something inside her had cracked. Not the pride that size doesn't break all at once. It was the certainty that she understood the world around her, the certainty that she knew the value of the people at her table. That certainty had just died at her own dinner table in her own home. I pulled out the third document. This is the 6-year financial performance report of everything I did for the company. I placed it on the table, open, detailed, every number, every decision, every result. Debt restructuring, renegotiation of 7 supplier contracts, $480,000 per year in unnecessary expenses eliminated, implementation of weekly cash flow controls, replacement of the accounting firm, quarterly audits. I looked at Richard, directly, without blinking. The profit margin at Douglas and Hartwell Construction doubled in 2019. Revenue grew 40% between 2018 and 2024. That was not your management, Mr. Hartwell. That was mine. From home, from a laptop, from an apartment in Lincoln Square that Mrs. Beverly once said was too small. Mrs. Beverly was frozen, rigid in her chair like a wax figure, the gold necklace around her neck suddenly looking more like a chain, the royal blue dress suddenly looking like a costume. The smile she had used as a weapon had been dead for some time now. What remained was a blank face, hollowed out. A 60-year-old woman discovering that the reality she had constructed, the superiority, the control, the hierarchy, had been an illusion sustained by someone she had treated as inferior for her entire adult life. I produced the fourth document, the last one, and I placed it directly in front of Mrs. Beverly, on the linen tablecloth, next to the cheesecake she hadn't touched. This last document is my personal financial statement. My voice did not waver, did not rise, did not fall. I held the tone of someone reading the minutes of a board meeting, because that is exactly what this was. $4.2 million in company equity, real estate, and investment accounts, all in my name, all built by me, starting at age 20, on a work-study salary, then a junior analyst's salary, investing $400 a month, no inheritance, no father, no wealthy husband, no family from Lincoln Park. I left the document in front of her and waited as she read. I watched her eyes move across the numbers, watched her hands tremble at the edges of the page, watched her world collapse, line by line. You offered me $50,000 to leave your son's life. I spoke slowly, each word a brick. $50,000. I am worth $4.2 million, and I own 40% of the company where your husband believes he is the owner. You are dismissing me from the company that I saved. The silence that followed lasted an eternity, compressed into seconds. No one moved. No one breathed audibly. The crystal chandelier lit the scene like a theater spotlight, and I was at center stage for the first time in 7 years. I turned to William slowly, every degree of that turn carrying 7 years of love, of frustration, of hope, of grief. I looked into his eyes, those brown eyes, wet now, red at the edges. The eyes I had loved since the movie theater. The eyes that looked at me with warmth on the balcony of our apartment. The eyes that looked away in shame at this table. William. My voice dropped, became quieter, more intimate, as if the only two people at the table were us. I loved you for real, the way people from the South Side love, completely, without conditions, without contracts. I never told you about the company because I wanted you to love me for who I am, not for what I have. I felt my eyes burn. I was not going to cry. Not there. Not in that house. But the pain was real and it was present. And you loved me at home. Away from your family, you were the man I chose. You were good. He was crying, silently. The tears moving down his face without a sound. His jaw clenched to hold back the sound of it. His hands interlaced in his lap, his knuckles white. But here, at this table, with your parents, you turned into someone else. A boy, a coward. I did not say it with rage. I said it with truth, which hurts more. You put your head down and let your mother destroy the woman who loved you. Naomi, His voice broke, cracked in the middle like a wall that can no longer bear the weight. 7 years, William. I waited 7 years, and you never said a word. I picked up the divorce envelope, the white envelope from Mrs. Beverly, the $50,000 document that believed it could purchase my exit. I tore it in half. From top to bottom, the sound of the paper tearing filled the room like a dry crack of lightning. I tore it again, and again, until the pieces were too small to hold a single readable word. I set the pieces on the table on top of the white linen tablecloth, like confetti at the end of a party that was never actually a celebration. I will not be signing their divorce agreement. I looked at Mrs. Beverly, then at Richard, but I will be filing my own, on my terms, with my attorney, and my numbers. Mrs. Beverly tried to speak. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again, like a fish removed from water searching for oxygen that isn't there anymore. Naomi, this is your repayment for serving my mother coffee in the kitchen. Absolute silence. Easter Sunday, 2019. My mother came to your home. You offered her coffee, and you led her to the kitchen, to the service area, where the household staff takes their break. The back of the house, the place for the people who serve, not for the people who are served. My voice hardened, not from anger, from something older, from justice. My mother, who worked 32 years cleaning the homes of people like you served her coffee in the kitchen, in the service area, while the other women sat in the living room. I didn't, Mrs. Beverly started. Her voice came out thin, unrecognizable. You don't remember, because to you, a housekeeper is invisible. My mother cleaned your kind of home her whole life, and you don't even remember her face. I leaned forward, slightly, just enough for her to feel my presence filling the space they had always denied me. But my mother remembers, and I remember, and that is why I waited 7 years, because my mother told me something that day. She said, one day she's going to know who we are. I looked at Mrs. Beverly in the eyes. 5 seconds. 5 seconds that lasted 7 years. Mrs. Beverly, now you know. I stood up, picked up the black leather portfolio, left all 4 documents on the table. They were not for me. They were for the Hartwells, to read, to reread, to review, to wake up at 3 in the morning and remember that the girl from the South Side owned 40% of everything they thought was theirs. Mr. Douglas stood with me, accompanied me to the door. William stayed in his seat, frozen, his face wet, his eyes lost on some fixed point that did not exist. At the front door of the brownstone, the November night air hit me like liberation. Cool, clean. The smell of the Lincoln Park Gardens, that same city, that same sky. But I was a different woman walking out of that house. Mr. Douglas placed his hand on my shoulder. Light, firm. Naomi, I am so proud of you. Thank you, Mr. Douglas. For everything. Don't thank me. I should be thanking you. You saved my company, and tonight you saved your own dignity. I didn't save it. I never lost it. They just thought I didn't have any. He smiled, squeezed my shoulder, and walked to his car. I got into my Equinox and drove to the South Side alone, down Michigan Avenue, through the city, down the narrow streets of my neighborhood. I pulled up in front of my mother's building. It was almost midnight. The kitchen light was on. My mother was awake, waiting, the way mothers wait, not knowing for what exactly, but knowing they need to be there. I went in. She was at the kitchen table. Coffee in front of her, the cloth filter hanging on the hook. The faint smell of the pinto beans from hours earlier, still in the air. I sat across from her. Mom, Mrs. Beverly knows now. She knows who we are. My mother looked at me. Those steady eyes trembled. For the first time in so many years, I saw those steady eyes tremble. Not from weakness, from emotion. From an old ache that had finally found relief. The kitchen coffee? Never again, Mom. Never again. She reached across the table and held my hands, those thick, warm, roughened hands. The hands that had raised me, sustained me, taught me that a person's value is not in their address or their bank account. It's in the spine that doesn't break even when it bends. It's in the eyes that don't look away even when they're exhausted. It's in the patience that doesn't run out, even when the whole world is telling you that you are not enough. Mom, if you want, I can send her coffee. To the living room, in a crystal glass, with the logo of the company that's mine. My mother stopped, set down the dish towel, looked at me. Those steady eyes transformed into something else. Not sadness, not anger. Laughter. A laugh that started in her feet, rose through her belly, shook her shoulders, and came out of her mouth as a full, open sound. A laugh I hadn't heard from her in years. Baby, no. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The kitchen coffee was more honest. Richard tried to fight back that same night. Mr. Douglas told me. He called desperate. Arthur, that woman cannot own 40% of my company. It is not your company, Richard. It is ours. And 40% is hers, signed, filed, legal. I'll contest it. On what grounds? She saved the company. She invested $480,000. She restructured everything. Without her, Douglas and Hartwell would have closed in 2018. You know that. I'll sue. Richard, Mr. Oh. Douglas's voice went serious, heavy. The woman you want to sue owns 40% of the company that pays your salary. If she chooses to, she can call a shareholder meeting and remove you from the directorship. Think carefully before you do anything. He thought, and he did nothing. Because when the truth is documented and signed and registered, no amount of rage can undo it. No cigar, no suit, no last name, no brownstone can defeat a legal operating agreement. I had known that since I was 22 years old, sitting in Professor Harris's finance class, writing in a $1.50 notebook. My mother had known it for 32 years, cleaning other people's floors and keeping her spine straight. Ms. Johnson had known it the day she sat my mother down in that school hallway and said, Your daughter is brilliant. She needs opportunity. The divorce was finalized in January 2025, uncontested because there was no alternative. My attorney, Ms. Ford, presented the complete financial dossier, every dollar documented, every investment traceable, every property deeded. William looked at the numbers and didn't challenge a single thing. Naomi, I accept whatever you want. He said it sitting in my attorney's office, wearing the look of a man who hadn't slept in weeks. The posture of someone who finally understood the size of what he had lost. Not the money. The money was never his. He had lost the woman who loved him for real, and he knew it. And I knew that he knew, and that was enough. I want shared custody, 1 week with me, alternating weekends with you. He nodded. I want the Lincoln Square apartment. He nodded again. I want my equity in the company, which has always been mine. He nodded. And I want one thing that is not in the paperwork. He looked at me. I want your parents to never again say a single word about where I'm from, about the South Side, about my mother, about who I am or where I came from. Agreed. The word came out rough, low, the voice of a man defeated, not by an adversary, but by himself. The custody was shared. The apartment stayed with me. The 40% stayed with me. Now officially, with my name in the board meeting minutes, my face at the conference table, my voice in the decisions I had always been making from the shadows. At the first board meeting after everything came out, I walked into the Douglas and Hartwell Construction Conference Room in the West Loop. Long table, 12 chairs, the head seat empty, because Richard had always taken the head seat and no one else had ever dared. I sat at the head of the table, without asking, without hesitation. Richard came in after me. He saw it. He stopped in the doorway. 3 seconds that felt like 3 minutes. Then he swallowed, pulled out the chair beside me, and sat down quietly. No cigar, no jokes, no looking down, no, that woman. Nothing. Because when the person you have spent years looking down at is now sitting in your chair, there is nowhere left to look but up. 240 employees received the official announcement the following week. Douglas and Hartwell Construction is pleased to announce that Ms. Naomi Helena Carter, managing member of HC Capital LLC, assumes a seat on the company's board of directors with direct involvement in strategic leadership. The suppliers found out. The clients found out. The market found out. The girl from the South Side now had a name in the header of the million-dollar contracts. Today is 2025. I live in Lincoln Square, the same apartment, 3 bedrooms, 1,200 square feet. The mortgage, paid off. I paid it with money I already had for years, but could never use without raising questions. Now I could. Now I didn't need to pretend anymore. I didn't move to Lincoln Park. I didn't buy a Range Rover. I didn't trade up for a bigger life. I traded the Equinox for the Mercedes GLA that had been sitting in a garage for 3 years, and now I drive it, without hiding it. But I live in Lincoln Square, because I don't need 4 floors. I don't need a heated rooftop pool. I don't need a landscaped backyard designed by an architect. I need my children. I need my mother. I need my laptop. I need my peace. And peace, I finally have. My mother came for Sunday lunch last weekend. Pinto beans, cornbread, braised chicken, collard greens, rice. Simple table, 4 chairs. Her, me, Michael, and Lily. The kids talking over each other between bites. My mother laughing at the stories Michael was telling about school. After lunch, in the kitchen, while I washed dishes and she dried them, because my mother does not stand still in anyone's kitchen, not even her own daughter's. She said, "Baby, I saw online that the company has your name now." Randall showed me. On his phone. I didn't understand all of it, but I understood that your name is on there. It is. Silence. The water running. The sponge on a plate. The dish towel in her hand. Does Beverly Hartwell know? She knows, Mom. More silence. My mother dried a plate slowly, set it in the rack, picked up another one, and then the coffee. I stopped washing, looked at her hands on the towel. Those hands I have known since I opened my eyes in this world. What coffee? The coffee she served me in the kitchen. I felt my chest tighten, not from pain, from love. The kind of love that doesn't need words because it's in the hands. In the silence shared between two women who climbed on their knees and are now standing on their feet. Mom, if you want, I can send her coffee. To the living room, in a crystal glass, with the company letterhead. My mother stopped drying, looked at me. Those steady eyes shifted into something else. A smile that came from her feet, moved through her whole body, and came out of her mouth as a full, open laugh. A laugh I had not heard from her in years, loud, clean, free. No, baby. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. The kitchen coffee was more honest. William came to find me once, after everything was settled. He showed up at the apartment on a Saturday morning. Deep circles under his eyes, unshaven, wrinkled shirt, no BMW. He took a ride share. The BMW was a company car. Now he remembered that. I opened the door and stood in the doorway. I didn't invite him in. Not out of cruelty, but because that door was now mine and I decided who crossed it. Naomi, I was wrong. His voice was low, rough, real. For the first time in 7 years, I heard pure truth in William's voice. I know. I should have defended you, at every one of those lunches, every single time. You should have. I sat there and listened and stayed quiet, and I knew it was wrong. Every time I knew. He stopped, swallowed, his eyes red. I was a coward. You were, William. I don't know what you are now. I only know what I am. I loved you. I know. But love that stays quiet doesn't protect anyone. It just watches. He lowered his head, a small nod, defeated. I'm sorry. You're forgiven, but not back. He looked at me one final time. With those brown eyes I had loved in the movie theater, that looked at me with warmth on our balcony, that looked away in shame at his parents' table. He turned and walked away, and I closed the door. Not with a slam, not with anger. I closed it slowly, with the same calm I had when I opened that black portfolio at that dinner table. With the same calm I had when I invested $480,000 in a failing company. With the same calm I had when I sat at the end of a table for 7 years and stored every offense like someone building a reserve. With patience. Because patience is the most powerful tool available to people who have nothing but their own strength. And I am the most patient woman in Chicago. My name is Naomi Helena Carter. I was born on the south side of Chicago. Daughter of a housekeeper. I grew up washing dishes with bar soap. I went to public school with a $1 notebook. I got into a top university with the help of a teacher who believed in me when no one else did. I saved $480,000 on a work-study income and the discipline of someone who understands that every dollar is a brick and walls are built slowly. I saved a multi-million-dollar company that was dying. I married the son of one of the directors. I was called That Woman, Limited, and not from our world for 7 years. I sat at the end of the table, swallowed the insults, kept the silence, waited, until the day they slid a white envelope across the table wanting me to disappear for $50,000. And I placed my portfolio on that table with the 40% that had been keeping the whole operation alive. And they discovered that the girl from the South Side was the owner of the table they were sitting at. My mother cleaned the homes of the wealthy her entire life. I bought into the company without yelling, without crying, without flexing, without humiliating them in return, because we don't have to give back the cruelty we receive. We only need to prove that we always deserved more than we were given. Because the most powerful tool available to those who have been underestimated is patience. And the greatest answer to humiliation is truth. If this story touched you, I need something from you right now. subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, leave a like. That like might feel like nothing to you, but it helps this story reach more women who need to hear it. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? What time is it where you are? And have you ever sat at the end of someone else's table? Have you ever been made to feel like you didn't belong somewhere you had every right to be? Tell me. Because here, we listen. Here, nobody drinks their coffee in the kitchen. There is a new story here every single day. Stories of women who went through things the world didn't think they would survive. And they survived. And they won. And they are standing, like me, like my mother, like you,